of the training. So I would like to welcome you all in this third webinar, focusing on the government procurement in Japan. Today we have with us Like from the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation and also his colleagues, experts from the Enterprise Europe Network. And today we will focus mainly on the public sector lighting market. So I hope that we will receive some important information about the lighting sector and how the lighting is managed through the government procurement in Japan. And then also Enterprise Europe Network will help us to understand how to find the local partners and how they can support us, in particular in view of the mission that we are going to organize in Japan in the next months. So I don't want to steal more time, and I will leave the floor to our experts. Just short information. You have the chat. You can also raise your hands. So if you have any questions, please write them or please highlight it by raising your hand. So when we'll have the question answers session at the end, but also if there is something important that you would like to clarify during the webinar, please feel free to make your questions. Thank you very much, and I wish you a great training webinar.
Okay, let us move to the you should be able to see the yes, presentation now. Very good. Third time and the one in the new year. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
And today, well, I'm going to talk about the public sector lighting market and from the perspective of public procurement, and also about building partnerships, which will be mostly done by my colleagues Noriko and Mark. To continue. Well, last time we didn't have much time for question and answer because I had a long story. Probably have a long story today as well. Any questions? It's 2-3 weeks ago, and Christmas and everything is in between. Any questions about what we discussed? What I discussed last time?
No, not particularly. I know that the partners were going through the portals and trying to use the Google Translator as best as they can.
Okay. Good.
But I didn't get any specific questions from now.
Okay. Then let's continue because it's as you said, we have a tight schedule. Well, today I'm gonna give you a government procurement market overview in relation to lighting, and discuss about well, possible ways to approach the market on the basis of our how we view public procurement. Then business partnerships, and at the end building business partnership, and then at the end a short introduction of the business services that are provided by the EU-Japan Center, to which both the EU Enterprise Network Japan Help Desk and the Japan Tax and Public Procurement are part of. Let's continue to the public sector lighting market. Well, so before looking at main suppliers and possible competitors, I think the question should be, and perhaps in your searches using Google Translate, you've already had some indications, is are there large value lighting contracts offered? So the ones that are covered by international agreements such as the WTO and the EPA. So when you look at the databases at JETRO, you can also search for certain categories of goods and services. And yeah, one of it also includes lighting fixtures and fittings. And And of course, it's a broad category because it also includes other things like sanitary products and plumbing. Well, what we look at when I looked at it, yeah, it's a broad category, but yeah, it shows very few on the central level in terms of what is relevant to lighting. And at the subcentral level, well, you have a few more, but also, yeah, only a few are relevant, perhaps to what the companies in your cluster are offering. What you see is, for example, lease of LED lighting for roads, which are larger, yeah, in terms of value, larger contracts. Also, it's when you are monitoring contracts, larger contracts, it's also good to look in the category 16 with electrical machinery, where you will most likely find lighting related tenders, contracts related to airports, runways, or buoys and traffic lights. Well, also an option is, and we'll go more into detail with relation to construction, is that there are few that are very specific related to lighting in construction services. But lighting is, of course, often an aspect of a construction contract when public works construction needs to be undertaken. And then there is, of course, the number 26 in JETRO, that is also a very broad category, but you can find incidental contracts related to lighting. And so a few examples. Well, this is one then for under the 16 and 21. Well, where an elementary school needs a LED lighting equipment, a lease agreement for multiple schools at a subcentral organization, which is in this case Kawasaki City, designated city. Then here's another one, which is the one related to lighting solutions for an international airport, Tokyo International Airport. So where they need a specific type of light bulb. Alternatively, here's also LED lighting equipment for a buoy. And perhaps one of the companies in your clusters has solutions in this field. So then this would be an interesting contract to pursue. And then, well, here we have under the classification of construction services, the replacement of road lighting facilities by one of Japan's highway companies. In this case, it's the bridge between the main island of Honshu and Shikoku. They have a large bridge there, and that is put into a public company. So here, yeah, if your company, offers road lighting solutions, then this might be something to look into further. And then here we have a very specific one is replacement of lighting equipment at a main cooling business at the Japan Atomic Energy Agency, which is a very specific and highly specialized type of business dealing with atomic energy, nuclear energy, etc., where they also need where they place their lighting contracts under miscellaneous articles. So it's good to look wide.
Can I ask? So this kind of categories is both for products and for services in this sector. So it's not.
Yes, this is yeah. But yeah, this is usually there is as we saw earlier in an earlier module, there is usually a division between goods and services and construction. So in this case, it concerns the provision of articles. So, and this is probably also a contract where the replacement by the company is expected. Well, actually, because it's public procurement, in many cases, or in government organizations should also publish who has won a contract. And in this case, well, because there were only few results available and also few contracts are related to lighting on the JETRO database, in JETRO databases. We couldn't find that many recent results, but here is one, and for this particular contract for the Japan Nuclear Energy Agency, and this was won by a company called aptly Corona Trading Company, and it's also an example, an illustration actually of what you see in Japanese government procurement everywhere, is that contracts are in many cases won by local companies, so companies that are quite close to the actual facility. And this case, this trading company is actually the trading company belonging to a larger entity, a larger electrical installation company, and this is their trading unit then, and quite close to where the JIA is located, and it's basically an electrical installation company. So that has tendered, put in a proposal and won this contract. So and yeah, otherwise the results that we found on JETRO, they offer few insights, due to the fact there are only very few results available. So when looking at JETRO, our assessment is that in terms of large value procurement contracts regulated by either the WTO GPA or the EU-Japan partnership agreement, is that there are few large value contracts on offer in terms of lighting, so where it's very specifically the installation and the provision of lighting solutions. There are very few in number that the Japanese government organizations, both at central level and sub-central level, have an offer. But they can also be, of course, part of broader procurement contracts, and then we should think about WTO and EPA regulated public works contracts. So I want to look a bit in more detail also to give you an idea about if you want to pursue those kind of contracts, what there are some aspects that you might that might be helpful in entering the market. Well, here are some organizations that you might want to target because they are involved in public works construction activities more than others. Well, of course, the main ministry, we've already seen that in a previous session, dealing with construction of public works infrastructure in Japan, is the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism. It has a very broad scope of activities and responsibilities, but construction is one of its core businesses. As you can see on the map, you can see there are different colors, and it's good to keep in mind is that the Japanese government usually divides the country up in these regions, these 9 regions, and in the Ministry of MLIT, I will call it MLIT, also has divided up the country into 9 regions that each have a regional development bureau, and they take care for each of the regions of the maintenance and development of public infrastructure. So that's where you need to be for opportunities. Then the other one is the Urban Renaissance Agency, which is a national government organization that is involved in the building of public housing, national public housing and development. So that's called the Urban Renaissance Agency. which is specifically there for the development of municipal development, city development on a national level. Then, if we go to the subcentral level, where we have higher thresholds, what we saw in the earlier modules, is in terms of prefectural level infrastructure and housing. Well, there are a number of entities within that organization that you need to look at or to approach, depending on what you want. First, there are public enterprises that are involved in construction, and then there is each of the prefectures will have a construction bureau, and they take care of the procurement and development of projects for public infrastructure, but they also have wider responsibilities such as flooding control. But public housing, which is for your company, is quite interesting, and public facilities. Then we have the designated and the core cities. Well, it's basically a slightly lower level, more local level, where the municipal infrastructure and housing, larger cities have municipal housing, and that is done by the Municipal Construction Bureau. They have to take care of road infrastructure, river management, and public housing, of course. Also, schools is the construction of schools is usually the authority and the responsibility of the boards of education within a city, a core city or a designated city. So if it's involved in new construction of schools, that is the procurement and development of project is done by the boards of education. Going to the next one. Well, then there are some other organizations that you might want to be, depending on what your product is, that might be of interest. We already saw one earlier, that one that was in charge of managing the bridge between Honshu and Shikoku. But Japan also has 3 large expressway companies, and the country there is divided in three, and each have their own organization, and they take care of road development. So, and that includes road lighting and everything related to that. So if you have something, if you have a product that is more specifically aimed at this type of organization, then these kind of organizations you will need to approach. Then an organization that is some you might that I also want to mention specifically is Japan Post. It's still national, it's still owned by the national government, and it has still a huge network. Well, I don't know how it is in your countries. In my countries, post offices usually have been already removed. You hardly can find a post office anymore. But in Japan, almost every small town still has a post office. And construction of post offices is, of course, the responsibility of Japan Post. So they have a substantial construction activity as well. And it covers the whole country from all the way up in Hokkaido to down in Okinawa. Then a category, well, that also is a umbrella organization of a large number of hospitals, the National Hospital Organization, and that's everything that has to do if you have activities in medical lighting, or if you have specialized in providing solutions to hospitals. This is one of the organizations that you can approach if you want to have a more targeted approach for the National Hospital Organization. And then the EPA has added another umbrella organization, which is called the Japan Community Health Care Organization, or JCHO, which also manages about 120 hospitals and clinics all around the country. Oh no, this is a 75. The other one has 120 organizations. So if your company has specific activities here or USPs, then that might be organizations to target. Then this is something I already spoke about this briefly in a previous module. Is the whole process of developing of a tender procedure, and I briefly also spoke the phase before an actual notice, and this is what you see here. This deals specifically with the steps of developing a public works tender before the actual notice is posted, because that's basically the result of a pretty long process before. You don't speak Japanese, so I've made it into English, which is a bit easier for you to look at. And well, basically, this goes through all the steps of a preparation of a tender to construct a piece of public infrastructure. And well, I recall that I mentioned it earlier already, that it starts with a plan proposal and well, securing a budget. So in the first and the planning phase, well, at the top row are the steps in the planning, basic design, executive design, cost estimation, and then the activity that takes place. So it starts with a plan proposal and a budgetary provision, so securing the budget, and then, well, that's of course done by the government office that is planning to give out a public infrastructure contract. So, well, that follows also first. Well, what do we need, and what kind of conditions? Well, the ordering entity, the government organization, can do it itself, of course, but they can also choose to select an architect or a construction consultant to make an assessment of, well, what is needed. So that's basically also a tender, as we shall see in a minute. Then, well, once the planning stage has, and yeah, it also involves of course, cost and work estimations in this phase as well. Then it moves on to basically a basic design, and that involves the preparation of basic designs catalog, and that's usually done by an outside specialist, a design or engineering office that will take care of this. And as far as we can see it, it's also perhaps a phase where also you as a company should also be involved in already, or that you are already on the surface. Your products are on the surface, because here probably a firm decision is being made into what kind of solutions are to be used. Then once that basic design has been made and approved, then the next phase will be that they are it goes into an executive design phase, which is more the practical actual construction, the planning of the actual construction on the basis of the basic design. And again, that is usually outsourced to the design and engineering office, and they will prepare a catalog of implemental design. So the whole process of building something. And on the basis of that, they are able to then we get to the cost estimation, because at the end, if you recall, we need to come up with a price, a budget price, the secret budget price. So a lot of time is spent on cost estimation, and that they set the right budget for the tender. So, and that again, you can use an external cost calculator for the preparation of a quantitative calculation catalog. Then we go to the lower part on the left, and that's also a phase where basically your company should be there, and the information from your company should be there, the gathering of estimates from manufacturers. So what are the various aspects of the project going to cost. And then, yeah, that's also one of the challenges, is how to get to the surface and that your product is also taken into consideration. So once that the gathering has finished, then it's setting up an estimate unit price. That's done by the ordering entity again. So in-house, the contracting department, and then it's entered into a cost calculation system by the cost calculator, and that also can be done externally. But if they have the specialist in-house, they can do it there as well. And then yeah, then they do it in-house, and at the end, well, there will be the decision of the design catalog. So everybody agrees that the noses are all in the same direction, and the contracting, the ordering department, everybody has given their approval, and then the projected price, which is then secret. The budget is set, and well, then the next phase is we're going to the tender notice. So let me see. So basically, if you look at here at this whole process, it involves quite a number of moments where there could be tenders as well. But yeah, you're enlightening. But there are a number of moments where the tenders are issued, and that's something, yeah, where you can look at. Also keep in mind is that actual construction is also often separated in different tenders. So large projects usually, in many cases, are still done that there is a tender for the actual construction. So the concrete, pouring the concrete and putting in the steel rods and everything, and there is a separate tender for electrical installations, and a separate one for mechanical installations, and sometimes also for things like sewerage and the water supply system. So that's also something that you need to keep in mind. So yeah, it's here the challenge for you is to how your product, your solution can be on the bureau, literally on the desk of the decision makers and be taken into consideration. I don't have the golden rule for it, unfortunately, but that's the challenge, that you have either a partner or you do it yourself, that at the time when decisions are being made for a public work construction project, that your product is being taken into consideration or included in the specifications as the standard. That's basically the challenge.
Sorry, Lieke, for this phase, for this particular phase, is there any moment when the public procurer collect the offers or make a sort of market search to understand what kind of products can be considered for the design phase?
Yes,
how they are
of
doing
course.
this?
Yes, it is often, as I said, it's tendered separately. So you will have announcements where they ask for if they do it, if they outsource it. For example, they will ask for offers from companies or architects or engineering offices to do the basic design of a public work structure.
So, for example, it will be good also to enter into the contact with this design offices or engineers that are external, that they collaborate with the public authorities.
Yes. So my point is exactly well seen. My point is also is that it would be good if you are on the radar of those kinds of companies or actors in this process, instead of a construction company, because a construction company, they just get a plan and they look at it and they make an assessment like how much does it cost to build it, and they build it to plan, and that's it. and they don't have any leeway in deciding, oh, well, we're going to put those lights in and we're going to put those lights there and those. Usually that's not the case. It's already been decided. So if it's at the, like, if it's a tender where they say, well, you need to build a school, it's already been decided.
So we need to get in contact with the architect studios or engineering offices.
Yes. Unless unless there is an opportunity for more generic approaches, that way you can perhaps get something on cost.
Yeah.
Right. So a construction company, and you offer your solution because you have low cost, and they might take it into consideration.
Okay.
But it needs to meet, and it has to meet the exact standards of what is asked in the tender.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Let me continue. So, general observations with regards to public works construction is, don't forget, it's highly advanced here in Japan, the construction business, and it's driven by challenges of natural disasters, earthquakes, typhoons, tsunami, name it. So, very high standards here that needs to be met. If you have a densely populated city as Tokyo, your electrical equipment needs to be fireproof and not cause fires, because they had bad experience in the past with large fires in this highly densely populated city. So those things are all need to be taken into account. Also, it's a highly protected sector, very locally oriented, very politically very powerful in Japan. And as I said, local construction companies win the contracts because and that's also something to keep in mind, because it's politically difficult to award a contract to an outsider. What you see, very large public works projects are usually won by general contractors, and they're called Zenecon in Japan, and there are a few logos on the right side of the larger ones. They're huge, they're internationally active, they're really humongous companies, and they basically they don't build themselves, but basically they have a huge networks of subcontractors and subcontractors that take care of the business, but they take care of the overall engineering and everything. They're huge. Look at the websites of those companies, and they are of a scale that we in Europe we have only a few of. So, well, some of the characteristics that you also need to keep in mind is that the sector is also dealing with labor shortage, which we also have a problem with in Europe in many countries, and that's also often nowadays a cause for cancellation of tenders, and also a reason for driving up prices. So because the budget developed by the government organization is too low, and the companies say, no, we can't do it for that price, so they bid too high, and then the whole procedure needs to be restarted. And also keep in mind, on the other hand, is that local governments throughout Japan have financial difficulties in maintaining and difficulty maintaining their services. So that's also something you need to keep in mind when dealing with construction, public works construction. So then that were the general observations. So as I said, few in number in terms of large procurement contracts, and well, public works construction, WTO EPA regulated, there might be lightning inside of it, but the result is of these observations is, of course, that it will for you be the necessity to focus on domestically regulated government procurement, or develop activities as a subcontractor, become part of a joint venture, or become a supplier to companies that win government contracts, or if your product is suitable for it, go for targeted marketing to develop single tender contracts. Well, I want to look a bit in all three of these. Firstly, domestically regulated lighting contracts. well, as we saw, what I looked at a variety of government organizations at various levels. What you see here is a screenshot from Nagoya's, the city of Nagoya, their procurement system, and it's a list of tender results, recent tender results that concern construction work involving lighting equipment. So with the prices behind it, and the companies that won it. Well, what you see is that usually government contracts that concern lighting are classified as construction work. So if you want to do it yourself, that will mean that you will have to do the whole case sheet, the business evaluation, get the necessary license as a construction company, then for installation work, so that's quite a complex. That will be a complex endeavor for you in order to be able to do it yourself. Again, as I already said earlier, it's usually awarded to locally operating electrical installation companies, and the companies that are listed here in this one also, they are in Nagoya. So it's the city of Nagoya, and all the companies are in Nagoya. Here are some of their websites. They all have very nice websites, and for each one, the one on the left top, it's a company specialized in road lighting solutions, located in Nagoya. That one of the contracts that I listed here earlier. So yeah, the challenges will be, as I said, is obtaining the necessary licenses. Here on the right, you see a copy. Usually, Japanese companies that they put their licenses on their websites, the one that they possess. So this is one of the companies, and they put their license for which was given by MLIT for that they are allowed to do electrical construction work. So denki koji, as it's called in Japanese. And that's one of the things that you will need in order to be allowed to do electrical work in this country. And of course, we've already discussed it in the previous modules. You also need to obtain the necessary qualifications to participate in a tender. And basically, de facto, it means that you have to have a local presence if you want to win government contracts here for domestically regulated lighting contracts. Then subcontracting, joint ventures, and becoming a supplier to companies that win contracts. There the challenges are, of course, the development of partnerships, because basically it means you are not a direct participant in a tender anymore. But you become a supplier to a company that is competing and winning and performing contracts issued by government organizations. So, the challenge is then how to develop those partnerships, and that later on after this, in a minute, Mark and Mita-san will tell you more about that, and how to do that in an efficient way. And also, is closely related to that is how can you be considered as a partner or a subcontractor for a government contract? And there, Marta already said it earlier, noted earlier. You need to approach the companies in the chain. You have a unique solution, or you have a very nice lighting solution, which has unique European design features. So you want to be in touch with architects and designers, and if you have a technical solution, you want to be in touch with an engineering office and have your product considered in the development of a tender that they say, that they will put a proposal to the government, like, this is what we found, and we want to use this Spanish company or Italian company that has developed this. And that's basically marketing, and it's also related to Marks and Mita Sons works at EEN. Yeah, or you need to find a supplier to companies winning contracts. And yeah, you need to find a suitable supplier and that's also one of the characteristics of Japan. It has a myriad supply chain with many layers of wholesalers and then before you get to the level. And yeah, the challenge there is to find in that haystack the right distributor for you that fits your product. I've put the JLMA behind it, so that's the Japan Lighting Manufacturers Association, which is also a good place to start and get an idea of who is moving and shaking here in Japan in the market. If I assume Marta has also forwarded the Word file with the links for this session, and there's also the link to the list of members of the Japan Lighting Manufacturers Association in English, and also some Japanese lists of companies active in the sector that you might want to look at. You are going to on a mission very soon, and also attend a trade fair. Well, there you meet the various people representing various types of companies. Trading houses, you have large trading houses in Japan, huge trading houses in Japan, and if you have a unique product, they're always very interested in your product. They want to put it in their catalog. I always say, keep in mind that large trading houses, they don't do business development. They have a catalog and they visit clients. So they will not develop the business for you. They just put you in the catalog and take you to their clients. And you also need to be very look at what they cover, what their strengths are when you are, because they usually want to have, of course, an exclusive contract for Japan with you. Yeah, if you say, oh, I've got a really nice large trading company that is interested in my product, and you sign a contract that gives them the right to exclusively deal with your product for the next 3 years, and then afterwards it gets silent and you don't hear anything for 3 years, you're stuck for 3 years and you don't have any results. So it's always something you need to keep in mind as well. But on the other hand, you can also look for a bit smaller, more specialist distributors or agents that do the legwork for you and perhaps have a good fit with you. It's always, I always say when we look, if it deals with government as clients, look at the coverage. What coverage can a distributor or an agent give you? Because if we deal with non-WTO EPA regulated procurement, there will usually be conditions in terms of local presence. If a company is only located in, let's say, Osaka and doesn't have any presence in Tokyo or in the north, then they might not be eligible to pursue contracts in Tokyo or up north. So always look at what kind of national network they have, and larger distributors will always have multiple offices spread around the country, usually in the same division as the regions that I showed you before. Then the last option, and it really depends on what kind of product that you have in targeting the market, is to develop single tender contracts. What we see in government procurement is that most of the contracts that we see that are awarded to foreign companies, so companies not located in Japan, are awarded in single tender contracts, and it's usually because they have a unique product that is not available in Japan, or there is no supplier in Japan. It doesn't concern lighting, but it concerns other things like scientific databases, for example, or unique chip technology. But you can do the same if you have a unique product that is not available in Japan. You can try to do targeted marketing towards government organizations and show them your unique product, service, or solution. But of course, there a Japanese language capability or a local representative will be essential. Because look, if you show up at a government, if you manage to get an appointment with a with a local government representative, and you don't speak any Japanese, you won't get far. So you won't get a business conversation. You need to have somebody there that speaks Japanese, or preferably a local representative. I'm giving you an example. It's not something. It's not a company that is in your sector, but it's an example of a European SME that in recent years has succeeded in developing a viable business in Japan. And the company is called iChooser. It's a Dutch company, and they are in solar panel group buying solutions. So it's basically an IT platform that they sell, a solution that they sell. What they have done, very bold, is they decided from the start not to start with working with a Japanese partner, though they decided we're going to make an investment. We have faith in our product, and we're going to set up a local company, iChooser Japan. KK, it's called in Japan a KK, Kabushiki Gaisha. So, and they hired a Japanese sales rep staff, and that staff, what they did is basically do the targeted marketing at Tokyo Metropolitan Government, at Kanagawa Prefecture, in Osaka, and they attended trade fairs as a Japanese company. And they managed, after the initial startup phase, they managed to secure contracts from Japanese government organizations to provide their service to their citizens. Because, their service was, of course, very interesting for the cities and prefectures, because it was helping them with showing their environmental credentials. So group buying of solar panels, and that's positive. That looks positive in terms of social responsibility and environmental responsibility. So they've been quite successful in recent years in securing contracts, and are currently providing this service to a number of government organizations in Japan. So those are different options that you might want to target the government market in Japan. Then,
yes. One as the local representation and the proximity is very important.
Yes.
I have a question regarding the Japanese government facilities in Europe, located in Europe, like embassies.
Yes.
I don't know, cultural buildings. Are they also covered by the government procurement? Because in this, if they have to procure, I don't know, lighting facilities for the embassy in Rome, in Italy, for example, the proximity and the location of the companies, is ensured.
I think that I know concretely from the Foreign Office, the Japanese Foreign Office, which is of course in charge of embassies in Japan and the facilities, will put out tenders. We'll put out tenders, yes, but I'm not sure whether those are competitive.
So
whether they're just designated, done locally.
Okay.
But they work with local companies. They will work with local companies. I've seen records of contracts that were given to local companies in European countries. Yes.
Because I was trying to figure out from the other side, when European companies will have some, let's say, advantage on the local Japanese companies. So when something is located in Europe. So
I think they will. It really depends on what is needed, but I think in terms of facility management, I would assume that in terms of facility management, so that's the maintenance of buildings that Japanese government owns in Europe, that is being procured locally by and awarded to a local maintenance company.
But it goes through the public procurement, or it's a direct contracting?
I think I've seen tenders, but it's public procurement, yes, and they have to. They as I said, I've seen data of foreign office contracts with
So it's the
foreign companies.
Okay, so it's the
Yes.
foreign office who manage this kind of tenders.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, for those, yes, but if you look, JETRO also has a network all around the world and have their own offices, and JETRO is part of METI, so they might also. I've seen foreign office contracts, but otherwise I don't recall them. I have to look into it if that has been awarded, but. Usually they will not be tendered under WTO as far as I know. Okay. So that's like embassy maintenance, etc. Or building a new embassy in, let's say, Rome, for example. Yeah. I've never seen anything like a public tender in that respect. No. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, my next slide was actually to go to give the floor to Noriko and Mark, and I understood from Noriko and Mark that Noriko will first take the floor, and while she speaks, then Mark and I will switch our presentations. Okay. Noriko. Perfect.
Hi.
Hello, Noriko. Yes.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. So, 皆様こんにちは. My name is Noriko Mita of EU Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation based in Tokyo. Today, we are very happy to see you virtually, and I hope your mission to Japan will be a successful one. So, before that, my colleague, Mark Leintis, will give you some information about the EU Japan Center and an Enterprise Europe network. Mark, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mita-san. So it's nice to see all of you. So as mentioned, I work with Likle and Mita-san at the EU Japan Center. And I have quite a general presentation, but I would like to give you some background info because I think it's helpful. And at the same time, also give you some more detailed, hopefully useful information and experience on Japanese partnerships, or specifically partnerships with Japanese companies, the sort of work we do at the Enterprise Europe Network. And beyond that, what the EU Japan Center does as an organization. So I will go to the next slide. So as you probably have found out by now, the EU Japan Center has quite a lot of projects, quite a lot of things going on. And that's partly because it's been around for quite a long while. It was founded in 1987. And this was at a time when, as you probably know, the Japanese economy was growing very rapidly. And the EU and Japan, or specifically maybe the EU, wanted to work to inform European business managers and executives on the Japanese economy, on Japanese business culture, and help them to succeed in doing business in Japan. And at the same time, on the Japanese side, there was also a growing interest to work with the EU, or at the time it was not the EU yet. But this was sort of the founding reason for the EU Japan Center. And we have, for that purpose, an office in Tokyo, where currently all three of us are located. And we also have an office in Brussels, where we have about 15 staff in Brussels and about 25 staff in Tokyo. So we're about 40 people in total. Mostly we divide things in a way where our colleagues in Brussels support European companies, and we in Tokyo work more with Japanese companies. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of overlap there, and it tends to mix. But at least for today's purpose, I hope to give you some information about our experience with Japanese companies. So I will not go into too much detail on this slide, but this is sort of a nice overview of the various focus points of the EU Japan Center. As I mentioned, initially the center, one of the main goals of the center was to train European business executives on Japanese business culture, on the Japanese economy. And for this purpose, we still have training programs about which I will give some more details. And we have various business services. And those two things will be the main focus of my presentation today. So first of all, our business services. So we have various help desks. Liekle, of course, is presenting in detail what he does with regards to public procurement. We also have a technology transfer help desk and a help desk for business cooperation outside of Japan. So EU and Japanese companies outside in other regions. And what Mita-san and I work for is EEN Japan, Enterprise Europe Network Japan. And I will then go to the next slide to explain in a little more detail what EEN is exactly. So you might already be familiar with EEN in your own region or in your own country, because the EEN is a very large network of partners who try to facilitate the internationalization of their local companies. So initially, the EEN was founded with the goal to help European companies find partners in Europe. So really facilitating partnership support within the EU. But this quickly grew beyond just the EU, and it was also expanded to Japan. So we are the only EEN Enterprise Europe Network partner in Japan. And what this means concretely, that we as the Japanese partner support Japanese companies to find partners in Europe. So we get requests from Japanese SMEs. I should note that specifically SMEs are the main focus of this program, although there are some exceptions. So when a Japanese SME comes to us, they explain what they would like to do in Europe, what their goals are. And we try to help them to find partners through this big network of EEN partners. So for example, if a Japanese company says, I would like to sell my products, which I must say is the more common thing to happen. So a Japanese company wants to sell their products in Europe. And they say specifically, we are interested in Italy. And more specifically, there's this one Italian company that we think is a great fit. Then we contact our partner, so a support organization in that region. It can be a chamber of commerce. It can be, in some cases, a university. And we ask them if they have a connection to this company and if we can match them. And from that point onward, after we create this match, I would say we are heavily involved in sort of cultural support, communication support, and we don't work as consultants. So we do not give specific advice on how to proceed or how to deal with the business specifically. But what we do is we try to help with the communication. So we are really matchmakers in that regard. And this, I will go into a little more detail about the communication specifically. But the way we do this is, one way is to use our database. So there's a large database where companies can upload profiles. So a company writes what they are looking for, what kind of partner they are looking for. And this is then uploaded to this public database. So this is something we do on behalf of Japanese companies. If you would like to make use of this service, you would have to go to your local partner in your local region. So if this sounds interesting to you, if you would like to write a profile aimed at, let's say, Japan, at looking for Japanese partners, we can introduce you to your partner in your region, and they can then help you to write this profile. And once this profile is written, we get a clear idea of what you are looking for as a company. And we can then also make a short Japanese translation of this profile. And we then disseminate this information to our network of Japanese companies. So this is just one very concrete example of how we support European businesses. And it's completely free of charge, like all our services at the center, which is probably important to mention. So this is just a very simple way of getting some promotion in Japan going.
Mark, can I ask?
Yeah, of course.
Is it possible to also as cluster in this database, or only for companies that product with their productions?
So clusters specifically cannot promote themselves as a cluster in the database. It's specifically aimed at companies. So my recommendation would be to tell your member companies that this is an option. As a cluster, of course, you can get in touch with your local partner, and you can tell your local partner that you are organizing these missions, or that you are going to Japan, or that you're specifically helping companies to go to Japan. And then your local cluster can help you, your local partner, your local EN partner can then help you from that point onwards. But to very concretely answer your question, the database itself is really aimed at companies. So it has to specifically be a company and an SME. And the only exception that we have with SMEs is that if there's a large company who wants to buy European products, a large, let's say we've had an electronics manufacturer, for example, who was looking to buy innovative European tech products, and those kind of companies we can help, even if they are big companies. But normally, in most cases, the rule is that it has to be an SME, and it has to be a company based in the EU with over 50% of its shares held by EU investors. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks. Yes.
So I also should mention, and I will do so in a bit more detail later, our matchmaking events. So there are many matchmaking events organized by partners and by us as well. Unfortunately, we don't organize any in the lighting sector, but we do support matchmaking events that take place in Europe, for example, and we try to bring Japanese companies to those events. So we promote those events. Of course, physical events have been very difficult these past 3 years. So a lot of these events are virtual, online, and we try to help Japanese companies to join these events, and also again with communication and technical matters. So specifically, something we organize and where we get, I would say, a lot of experience in how to support partnerships are the missions we organize. And this is where I would like to focus also a bit on the fact that you have an upcoming mission next month. So as EEN Japan, although I keep mentioning that Japanese companies are our main customers, our main clients, we are a bit unique compared to other EEN partners in the sense that we also organize missions for European companies to come to Japan. So similar to your mission next month, it's usually focused around a trade fair that's relevant to your specific sector. As Likle mentioned as well, finding companies in Japan, usually at trade fairs, companies in specific sectors will be present. And we try to organize things in such a way that there will be opportunities for companies to meet and find potential partners at trade fairs. But something to note about Japanese trade fairs is that there's often no matchmaking component. So Japanese trade fairs are very strongly focused on promoting the products. It's an opportunity to sort of showcase your latest technologies, your latest products, and also often an opportunity for companies to catch up with their already existing partners. So something we try to do is to add a matchmaking component to our own missions, either by finding trade fairs that already have a matchmaking included, which is quite rare in Japan, or by organizing our own. However, we've also worked with trade fairs that had no matchmaking component. And in those cases specifically, it's highly recommended to do research beforehand. So Likle shared the list of the association. So looking at those lists, identifying companies that could be interesting potential partners, and then also double checking if they will be at the trade fair. If they will not be at the trade fair, you can try to take the next step and email them or invite them formally to your booth, to the trade fair, inform them that you will be in Japan, and try to set up a meeting that way. But really doing your research before coming to Japan, identifying those companies that you would like to meet, and then going to their booth or having them come to your booth if they are interested, I think is a very good step that you can already start working on right now. Unfortunately, the difficult part is afterwards, which is, as I mentioned, because these trade fairs are not so strongly focused on matchmaking, a lot of the people you will meet are the sales representatives and not necessarily the people who are looking to buy your products or incorporate your technology in their designs or their buildings or what they are working on. So in those cases, you also have to be lucky to some extent that this person is willing to introduce you to their colleagues who are in charge of these matters. And I think also patience is important. Finding the right partner, finding the right person who is willing to work with you can take a lot of time. So we've seen time and time again that companies coming to Japan for the first time usually in some cases expect to find a partner during that first visit. But we always tell people to really be patient in finding partners in Japan, because building trust and building a relationship with a Japanese company takes time, unfortunately. So what I mean by that specifically is that decision-making in Japanese companies is usually done very carefully. So if you find someone who's interested in your products, they cannot tell you that they are going to sign a deal with you. This needs to be discussed, and this needs to be considered. But the upside to that is that Japanese partnerships are usually for the long term. So once you find a partner in Japan and you build that trust and you develop that relationship, you can usually count on that partner to be there for you in the long term. So in specific sectors, I must admit I have not been to trade fairs in the lighting sector myself, but depending on sort of the how international these trade fairs are, there can also be a very strong language barrier. So we've usually made sure that there are interpreters present to help with the communication with potential Japanese partners. And something we've seen is that interpretation helps a lot to make that first connection, which is very valuable. But it's also very difficult to keep that relationship going if you have to strongly depend on interpretation. So if you have a great conversation with a Japanese business person through interpretation, and you send them an email afterwards completely in English, in some cases, you might not get a reply because they're quite intimidated by this email in English. So this language barrier is definitely an issue we've seen time and time again. And this is something in our missions that in the follow-up after these missions, we often encounter that, first of all, it takes time for Japanese companies to get back to you because of this sort of internal decision process that I mentioned. And secondly, there is a strong language barrier. In both cases, support that we offer is, for example, to call the Japanese company or to email the Japanese company and to ask them simply why they are not replying or why they are taking so much time. And the reasons I gave you are usually the main reasons. They need more time or they are still making a decision. But sometimes it's also just an indication that they are no longer interested. But I would say that that's the minority of cases. In a lot of cases, communication can be revitalized by having sort of a Japanese person, or at least a Japanese channel of communication to ask how things are going. So I don't want to make this too long, but just a few things I've noticed, and I think I would say not to give up too quickly, because these challenges can seem hard to overcome, but it's also through time and building that trust that results are gained. We often mention that a lot of the partnerships that we see come to fruition take up to 3 years to materialize. So we have companies coming to Japan for the first time in, well, I would say before COVID, actually. That's just about 3 years. And we're now seeing those companies actually signing partnerships because the borders are back open. They've stayed in touch. They've discussed. As Likle mentioned, there are many certifications that those companies will surely want to know if you have them, or if you're capable of getting those certifications, which are required to have your products on the Japanese market. So this back and forth communication is something you need to be prepared for. There will be a lot of questions and it will take time. But then in the long term, if all goes well, and if both sides are truly interested, partnerships do materialize. But it takes time and patience. So on that note, I would like to just briefly go through some of the other services we have to help in this regard. So I went to the next slide, which is our help desk on EU-Japan business cooperation outside of the EU and Japan. So very briefly, I will just mention, because you're focused on Japan now, and this might be a step too far at the moment, but just to keep in mind that we have a help desk that supports these sort of trilateral partnerships. So, for example, this help desk organized a mission to Vietnam very recently, where the goal is really to find projects where EU and Japanese companies can work with a Vietnamese partner in this case, such as big construction projects, such as infrastructure. So it's a very recent help desk, but it might be interesting to keep in mind. And I can put you in touch with the people in charge of this help desk if this sounds interesting to you.
It's markets like trilateral, right? Cooperation, EU, Japan with the third country, external
Yes.
to the EU. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So in addition to this, we also have I would say a small scale service called Step in Japan. So if you're visiting Japan for business purposes, and if you are an SME, we offer one of our desks to you. So in our office here in Tokyo, we have 2 meeting rooms, a desk which you can use. So it can be helpful to have a phone line, for example, to make calls from. And we as the staff are also there to answer any questions you may have. Also, just quickly note that we are the contact point for Horizon Europe in Japan. So we also deal with, for example, Japanese companies interested in joining those tenders. And then I would like to quickly move to the training programs we have, which I think help a lot with some of the more general information I gave you on dealing with Japanese companies, going to Japan, being at Japanese trade fairs, and sort of the challenges that can present themselves when trying to do business in Japan. And I think the most interesting one is Get Ready for Japan, which you can see at the very top. And I have a PowerPoint slide dedicated to this training program. And this is, I think, one of the longest running services in the center. And the goal is mainly to explain to European business executives how to do business in Japan in a multifaceted way. So participants physically come to Japan, hopefully again from this year. It has been virtual for a few years now. But the idea is that there are physical lectures here in Tokyo explaining the Japanese economy, explaining Japanese business culture, and explaining also, similar to what Likle did just now, some of the more practical aspects of the Japanese economy, Japanese trading companies, and how they function. And this is really done in a practical way where you learn how to deal with business cards in Japan. So the fact that you are expected to have a business card, ideally with Japanese writing on one side, how to give them in a polite manner, other business etiquette, where to sit at the table, where to stand in an elevator. It can get very specific. And those are the kind of things that are explained in these training programs. So it can be very helpful if you would like to make a good impression to a potential Japanese partner. And it can also help you get some background information on perhaps how Japanese business people think about how they approach a possible partnership, and so on. So this is done in the form of lectures, but also actual workshops where Japanese managers and European managers, so the participants in this training program, are put together in a room, and they just do exercises. So they sort of simulate a business meeting and try to learn from both sides on how they can improve their communication and so on. In addition to this training, we as EEN, we provide partnership support in the form of organizing 3 meetings with a potential Japanese partner. So we ask you, if you're interested, to give a list of companies you're interested in, and we try to then set up a meeting with these companies. The idea is that you get to use the skills you acquired and actually use them in this meeting. So we usually tell the companies the purpose for visiting Japan, the fact that you're taking part in this training, and to please share any information that might be helpful for the company to succeed in Japan. So the deadline for this year's edition is on the 16th of March, which is 2 months from now. So if you know any companies that might be interested in taking part or could benefit from this, or maybe as a quick follow-up to the mission next month, I highly recommend this program.
I see this is quite challenging because it's you select only 14 managers. So are you selecting the representatives from the specific sector? For example, I don't know, you focus on automotive or you focus on IT, or there are some specific criteria that only few of the applicants can really reach?
So I must admit that our Brussels office is mainly in charge of choosing the participants. So we in Tokyo I do not have access to the specific criteria. I do know that usually a company representative who is in charge of the Japanese market, let's say, would be chosen. So if there's a strong focus for this person to find partners in Japan, I think on the website it's written, for example, somebody who will be a sales representative in Japan or is going to be moved to Japan to work there. That's the ideal candidate, but also simply somebody who stays in Europe but is in charge of the Japanese market, let's say. So that's the kind of profile. Okay, so there is no specific sectorial, let's say, focus. It's open to all industries. Okay. Yeah, it's absolutely, and any sector is welcome. So it's usually a very interesting mix of some very high-end technologies to a company that makes candy. It's okay. Yeah. Okay. It can be quite fun to see all the different companies together with the same goal, basically. So I will just briefly follow up on that and wrap up as well to say that we have some interesting information sources. So we have a research scheme, which basically we invite researchers to our offices in Japan to do a 6-month fellowship research scheme. And these reports are all published on our website. There's an EU-Japan Business Roundtable where business leaders come together and make a proposal to the respective governments on what they would like to see change or see improved in the general business or the economy, I would say, and then the government rules. And we also have various reports and webinars on the Japanese market, including ones on construction, on architecture, etc. So this specifically is a website called EU Business in Japan, which contains all of these market reports and all of these webinars, podcasts. So I highly recommend signing up. If you're located in Europe and working for a European company or organization, you can sign up for a free account and read all this information. So on that note, I would just like to thank you all for your time and attention. That was a lot of information, and I will definitely share this PowerPoint so you can just take your time and read through it. Especially when it comes to finding your local EEN partner. If you have any difficulties in doing so, we would be more than happy to introduce you. And furthermore, please make use of our help desks. Sign up for our training programs, our missions, if those are relevant to you. And I hope you have a very successful mission next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much, Likle and Rita. It's a very challenging market for us. So all the information that you share with us, all your experience and recommendations are more than welcome. And in particular, when regarding the mission that we're organizing, we took very literally all the Likle inputs, and we have contacted, we are managing right now to organize it with support of the Chamber of Commerce that represents our countries that are located there. So they're obviously speaking Japanese, so they can support us also with the translations and with understanding the culture or the business culture of the country we are going to visit. So it will be very, very challenging, very interesting. It's like the first approach for us. So it's the exploratory mission, and everything we are doing right now is to learn the basics and then try to put some, let's say, planned and reasonable follow-up, as you said, because we understood that finding the partners or understanding the market, I'm not speaking about entering the market, that is the final step, is very long. So all these bricks that we are collecting right now, I think that will help us to put quite good planning strategy for Japan, at least to provide as much as information as we can to our companies, because small, medium-sized enterprises, and particularly from the lighting and a bit of furniture sector, still now sees Japan as quite exotic market. It's somewhere there, totally different, very close. And what we are doing is trying to, open a bit the door and give them at least all the tools that they can use to try to understand if there is the market, when they have some possibilities or not. And not speaking only about the public procurement, that is very specific, but in general, also about this strict commercial market with other companies, with direct customers also. So I just would like to thank you all, and I don't know if there are any questions from the public. For sure, what I would like to then discuss when we will, because in these moments, in these days, we are entering in the real planning of the mission in Japan. We are verifying, of course, which partners from the Extra Light will take part. We are start to plan, define the agenda. Well, one of our questions was to Likle if we can also maybe meet you in your offices in Tokyo to then understand directly what kind of support, specific support service for the lighting sector can be maybe set for the follow-up activities.
Sure, we can arrange. We can arrange an event, a small event for you here when you're here, and I think it's then you should let us know when you have time in your schedule. And then we can look what then we can see here what the possibilities are to organize something for you here. So I think that will be possible. I think what Mark said in his presentation is and that's important for you, is don't become a shooting star. It's what I wrote down. Perhaps also what what Mark said is it will require Japanese market. I hope through these 3 sessions that it has become a little bit less exotic. And that you have gained some valuable insights into how things are working here, both through what I've been telling you over the past 3 sessions and what Mark just told you. It is challenging, it will require a long-term commitment in order to secure serious business here. It is not. It doesn't. A visit to a trade fair is basically a start of the endeavor. And for you as clusters, and for then the companies that you represent. And it will take time, and as Mark said as well, if you are willing to take time and willing to make the commitment in terms of also not being here just once and then wait for somebody to come and call you, but come back regularly at other venues and keep in touch with the people that you've met. Then after a while you might pick the fruits of your endeavors, and as Mark said as well, if the companies, European companies that have relationships with companies here, partnerships or clients that they sell to, it's usually a long-term thing founded on trust. And
absolutely.
After and all those companies that have developed those relationships have gone through that period of investing in building that trust. And I think that's also important for your clusters and the companies that you represent to be aware of and take into account, is that that will be necessary in order to be successful here. It's too simply thought that you believe that your product will sell itself, and it doesn't do it in its home market, I assume, and it won't do it here either. So
the strategy of little steps, I think it's the best in this case, and in particular.
And also perhaps it might be that's also in developing this training for you, is also something that came into my mind, is also pool your resources in terms of creating a Japanese presence by pooling your resources. Individually, it might be difficult, and you might have competitive feelings toward each other, but if you are successful as a cluster or as a cluster of clusters in creating a Japanese looking presence here, that might be of benefit for you as a group.
It's absolutely one of the let's say path that we will explore for sure. We are also in view of this mission right now, and after having collected some information about the Japanese market, what we would like also to understand is this one important path, that process that you mentioned, is how to enter in connection with some associations of architects, designers. So let's say the intermediate bodies that can in some way be connectors also to not only to the public procurement, but also to the private customers. So it's also one of the parts of the mission there, and then also to understand.
And hopefully you will meet some of those. Hopefully you will meet some of those at the trade fairs.
We are now defining with the chambers of commerce that will support us what kind of meetings they can manage to organize for us, with whom they can connect us. So for sure their support will be important.
Yeah, it's definitely a good idea to ask them. We would like also to present our products and services to architects and engineering officers, because that they have a important say in at least for government projects. Of course, where I'm talking about, they have an important say in what kind of lighting solution is being chosen. So stress that with the embassies and the chambers of commerce in terms of, like, we would like to meet with groupings of those kind of companies.
Yeah, this will be something. And then we can also always invite them back, because there will be one of the biggest lighting and furniture fairs in Europe, in Milan, in April. So just to understand also if some maybe of these potential business partners are also present. I don't know what is the attitude of Japanese companies in traveling abroad and take part in the trade fairs in Europe, for example. You know,
they will. The larger companies definitely will, of course.
So it can be
some of the manufacturers that I've listed in the handout for this module. Look, they are multinational companies, though. They will be at trade fairs with their own booths, I'm sure.
So this is also some way to approach them. If maybe in the Japanese trade will be too difficult because of the language barrier. In the European trade fairs, there will be the representative for sure will speak English. So it might be
they will have business development, but business developers with English language capabilities or foreign language capabilities. But of course, if you meet them in Europe, they are there to sell their products. But if you have a common, able to find a common ground, that might be a way to pursue as well. Yes,
absolutely.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Mark, how many companies? I don't know if he told me, but I didn't understand very well. How many companies they supported, for example, last year in terms of number, and what was the most important service the companies appreciate, in your opinion, the follow-up of your services for the companies?
Mark.
Yeah. When it comes to specific numbers, of course, I have to mention that COVID made entry to Japan very difficult, if not impossible, for most of last year. So if you allow me, I will refer a bit more to maybe pre-COVID, how our missions worked, and also then explaining a bit what we did during COVID. But I have some posters behind me, which I think are a bit too small for you to see, but they show kind of our results over the past 10 years. So I would say that, or I should have mentioned maybe, that our main goal is partnerships. So our KPI is to have a partnership between a European company and a Japanese company. And when a partnership is, we count a partnership as a contract being signed, for example, very specifically. And over the past 10 years, and if you allow me, I'll just turn around because I don't have these numbers exactly memorized, but we have 77 partnership agreements, which we supported. And that is within a total of 7,704 meetings, which were arranged. And this number of meetings, for example, is meetings we arranged during our missions, but also meetings that were arranged during matchmaking events. So matchmaking events in Japan, which we organized, or matchmaking events organized by partners in Europe, where a Japanese company and a European company met. So from these numbers, and this is over the past 10 years, we usually mention that you can sort of indicate a 1% success rate, which in reality, of course, is a little higher. We don't always know if there has been a partnership. Sometimes these partnerships are confidential. Sometimes companies simply don't inform us, although we do kindly ask them to. So that's the numbers over the past 10 years. Then to specifically answer your question of how many we helped, let's say in the last year, our yearly goal is to have between 10 to 15 partnerships. And in our missions, we organize currently 4 every year. We have 12 EU companies participating. So if you count all of that up, that would be 48 companies that we bring to Japan. But this is really our missions to trade fairs. So we also organize matchmaking events. The largest we organize is in the biotech and life science sector. And this sort of event, the most recent one was just after Japan opened its borders, and we had about, the biggest we've had, which was both virtual and physical, was I think about 300 participants. I don't remember the exact numbers of last year, but that's roughly, I would say, the total number of participants in this sort of matchmaking event, with about I would say a 50-50 between Japanese and European companies. So I've just been trying to give you a lot of numbers to sort of indicate what we work on, and the fact that we try to get 10 to 15 partnerships every year, and over the past 10 years, so 77, a little more now because this poster was created last year. So about a 1% success rate, which indicates the difficulty, but also the fact that you need to persevere, try to meet many people, and try to be in it for the long haul. So I hope that answers your question. If you would like any more specifics, please let me know.
Oh, it's okay. So, sorry, just information about the follow-up on the services. What kind of service the companies prefer, the matchmaking or the meetings or participation in fairs? What's the most important service that you provide for them in terms of appreciation from the company?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think we have done specific satisfaction surveys for all of our services combined. I would say that usually our training programs get very good reviews. Most companies I speak to are very. I've never heard a company say that they felt like they wasted their time coming to Japan and taking part in the training program. They always mention they get something out of it. I would also say our company missions are well received. I mean, for each thing we do, we usually have a satisfaction survey afterwards. And I would say that it also highly depends on the trade fair that a mission is organized around. So we, as the organizers, we can do everything in our power to help our participants and help them with interpretation, with a nice booth, with Japanese language materials, which I think is good to mention, which I think I forgot. So having a company flyer or pamphlet in the Japanese language and being able to give something in Japanese to the person you're talking to is very valuable. But not to go on a tangent. I think even if you do everything right, if the trade fair is very, let's say, domestically oriented, so if the Japanese companies are purely there to, as I briefly mentioned, to catch up with their existing partners, to sell their own products and not looking for international partners, that can, of course, negatively affect your experience. So I would say we've had business missions where the trade fair itself was not ideal, and we try to always find new trade fairs in that case, or new opportunities, or organize our own matchmaking events in those cases to sort of make up for what's lacking in the existing mission or trade fair. So yeah, I think for the businesses, it's really it's a long-term approach in that the training is very valuable to learn the basics as an entry point. The missions are very valuable both as an entry point, but also for follow-up. And then sort of these matchmaking events can also be a first meeting, a first entry, but also, again, an opportunity to follow up. So I would not say once service specifically is the key or the best, but trying to use all of them so doing a mission to Japan, training, taking part in matchmaking events, just trying to find ways to meet people and stay in touch.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. I think there is no other questions. I think that we'll be in touch for sure, because as I said, Japan is one of our internationalization, one of the countries targeted by our internationalization strategies and activities in the extra light. So one more time, I would like to thank you all for being here. I would like to thank Likle, Mark, and Noriko and Sita for your experience, for your expertise, and for giving this training for us.
Thank you, everyone.
I will share, of course, all the presentations and all the materials that I received from Likle to all the participants. So you have all the slides that I received this morning. And thank you one more time for being here.
Yeah, and feel free to contact us, and we hope to be able to meet you all very soon in next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
ありがとうございます。